Japan. Japanese people call their country Nihon or Nippon, beginning of the 20th century. While the land of the rising sun is developing fast, reinventing itself and becoming the first Asian power dealing with the pace of globalization, the dead bodies of 6 young women are found in different prefectures in Japan. At first, no one knew what had happened to them, but after a careful investigation, all cases led to one criminal and revealed dark secrets of that person. Who was it? And why did that person become one of the first serial killers in the history of Japan?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the room where even walls have ears. This is my very first video on this channel and generally on YouTube platform. I know that there are a lot of channels and videos dedicated to true crime series. However, on my channel, I would like to cover some of the stories that are not famous or even untold. So without further ado, let's get started with our first video. So today's story took place in Japan. Japan is well known for being one of the safest countries in the world. To imagine how safe Japan is, you can imagine like first grade school children walking on their own and taking buses on their own without the surveillance of adults. Also, Japanese people are famous for being kind, well tempered, and intelligent. Sounds like the perfect place and paradise on earth. However, even in such a perfect place as Japan, have been some blood curdling murder cases. Probably some of you have already heard about such cases as the otaku killer case, the vending machine killer case, or the murder of Lindsay Hawker. But have you ever heard about Sataro Fukiage, one of the first serial killers in the history of Japan? Historical facts say that he has sexually abused almost 100 of women and killed some of them. So let's dive into who was Satoru Fukiage. Satoru was born in 1888 in the Shimogyo district of Kyoto City, one of the historical capitals of Japan. He was born to a family of weavers and craftsmen and was the oldest among a lot of brothers and sisters. His father was doing mechanical craftsmanship and married Satoru's mother at the age of 21. Unfortunately, Satoru's mother had to deal with a lot of cheating problems and alcoholism problems of his father. Since his family was not the affluent one, all of the family members had to live under the same roof. Also, they never had enough food, so frequently Satoru went to sleep hungry. Later in his biography, he stated that since all of them slept in the one small room, he would hear how his parents had sexual intimacy. Moreover, he stated that he was not afraid of touching and molesting his younger sister who was sleeping next to him. So you can figure out that something was wrong with him in the early ages. Later, when Satoru was just 9, he was sent away as a servant to serve in a family of weavers. Unfortunately, his family had no choice but to send him away since they were desperate for money. Nowadays, Japan is one of the richest countries in the world, and people are getting decent salaries. But back then, in the 19th century and in the beginning of 20th centuries, people were struggling with poverty. If you thought that Satoru was very sad when he was sent away from home, you would be right. Well, to a certain extent. In the beginning, he was really satisfied with his life since he was getting meal 3 times a day. However, after a while, when the workload increased to 18 hours per day, he became a disobedient worker. That's why he would be beaten if he was nodding off during the work hours. Once he was even caught on stealing money and eventually got fired. On and off, he was working for different families as a servant, but eventually he would either wear out and run away or get fired. At the age of 11, he was kicked out from another house because he was caught sleeping with a 17-year-old maid. This was probably his first sexual experience, however, it has never been confirmed whether he was a virgin before that or not. The very first time when Sataro was sent to jail, he was just 13 years old. He stole money from another family but couldn't get away with it. So he spent 2 months in Kyoto prison, and according to his testimonies, he liked the prison life more than the life as a servant or even the life in his own family because he was getting free meal and got education. His cellmates were very nice to him and they were teaching him such basic disciplines like kana or Japanese language. After being discharged from Kyoto prison, Satoru moved to Osaka. Meanwhile, his family lost their house and became homeless, begging here and there across different regions of Japan. So you understand that he had almost no place to return. So Satoru started working in a factory as a general worker. He really wanted to go back to prison since there he had no responsibilities and no burden to carry. After a while, he went to a restaurant where he ordered food and left the restaurant without paying for meal. So police caught him and sent to not jail but to a rehabilitation center. Unfortunately, back then, rehabilitation centers as well as other institutions were controlled by Yakuza. Yakuza, also called Boryokudan or Gokudo, are Japanese gangsters, members of what are formerly called violence groups. So they used so-called rehabilitation centers for their own purposes, for fostering and making and eventually recruiting new members of their gangs. And especially in that rehabilitation center, Sataro learned some new tricks like pickpocketing or stealing. After leaving the rehabilitation center, he used his new skills for black business. In other words, he was committing different types of crimes, including robberies and even rape. But he really wanted to reunite with his family. So he decided to keep robbing so he could procure a new house for his family. He even managed to buy new equipment for his father so his father could go back to work. During this time, acting like a hero for his family, he had a couple of relationship stories with women. It is known that a relationship story with a 13-year-old girl had no success since that girl had to move away with her family. Another love story with a 20-year-old lady had no success either. After that, he moved to Kyoto and started living with a lady in her 50s. Sataro himself was just 17 years old. He was sleeping with her and her 11-year-old daughter. To be more exact, he was raping her. It is also known that he was raping some neighboring girls as well. Eventually, he was caught on that, and guess what? Kicked out. Satara kept moving from region to region, from a city to city. And later in his autobiography, he mentioned that he would feel himself ambiguous. He had a so-called alter ego. One day he was a normal man, the other day a colorful demon that forced him to commit sexual and evil acts. The very first murder Satro committed when he was 17 on September 24th, 1906. The victim was an 11-year-old girl whom Satro knew from his childhood. He met her at the Kinkakuji temple and invited her to the mountains to pick up some locusts. So the girl, not suspecting anything and totally trusting Satoru, followed him. Later, she was sexually abused and strangled to death with her own towel. When investigators asked Satoru why would he do that, he said that since girl knew him, she would reveal his identity to the general public and to police, so he had no choice but to kill her. After the murder, he tried to run away to Gunma Prefecture, where there was a great congregation of weavers, but he had no money and was caught by detectives. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, and his defense also appealed to the court, but failed. Despite of being sentenced to life imprisonment, Sataro spent only 15 years in jail and was released in the early 1922. During his imprisonment time, he was totally invested in literature, philosophy, math, and other academic disciplines. And after the release, he tried to have proper and honest life. However, his dark wishes were exceeding his own will. He had no success of finding job because of his criminal background. He was wandering from city to city, broke, jobless, and frustrated. And in 1922, he was caught after allegations of molesting a 4 years old girl. However, this case was dismissed. So he was growing the resentment inside of him, and he tried to release that resentment with retaliation. And that retaliation was quite severe and devastating. His another victim was a 16-year-old girl whom he met near Nagoya Castle. So, starting from that point, his true identity showed up itself. And in just 10 months, starting from 1923, he raped dozens of women and girls and killed at least six of them. And the list of his victims include Kei Mizuno, a 16-year-old maid in a village of Saitama. She was assaulted and found dead in March. Chiyo Kato, another 16-year-old young woman who was killed in the mountains of Gunma in April. Hatsubagaki, a 12-year-old girl, was assaulted and found in a mulberry field in Gunma in June. Kichi Kobayashi, a 14-year-old girl who was strangled and whose body was later found in a mulberry bush in Nagano in August. And finally, a 13-year-old girl whose name was not revealed was found in the mountains of Chiba in September. After the murder of Hatsubagaki, the first article, consisting 2 columns, was published on June 11, 1923, in the local newspaper of Gunma Prefecture, Jomo Shimbun. It was saying that in the field not far from Numata town, a girl's dead body was found and immediately sent for an autopsy to find out who was the main culprit. Around noon on the 7th, the eldest daughter of Sokichi Araki went to meet her father, who was cultivating a nearby rice field, and to pass him a lunchbox. She did not return home and went missing. Her family members were devastated, and everyone was looking for her. An officer from the Numata police station went to the scene with a doctor to perform an autopsy, and as there was sufficient suspicion of murder, she was immediately sent for an autopsy. The case is under investigation, and it is known that another girl was found to be kidnapped in the same town. 2 months later, another newspaper called Shinhano Mainichi published a new article about a new murder case depicting the case of Kichi Kobayashi, but this time in another prefecture, Nagano. A factory girl was kidnapped and brutally murdered in a mulberry field. On the evening of the 16th, the victim was going to see the Bon Odori dance at the Yamajugumi silk mill in the same village. Later, she was seen playing inside Tanaka Station, but when she was separated from her friends around 9 p.m., she was raped and strangled in a mulberry orchard about 2 towns east of the station. The worried family members were desperately looking for their daughter, and at around 4 p.m. the next day, her dead body was found. Later, a board of investigators and the Metropolitan Police Department stated that they were thinking that all the murders were committed by the same person. It was because the method of killing and disposal of corpse were basically the same. So they started working really hard in order to investigate, and they were trying really hard to find and interrogate as many witnesses as possible. However, The Great Earthquake, also known as the Great Earthquake of Kanto region, that occurred on September 1st, 1923, destroyed not only one huge part of the country, but also demolished all the plans of police and investigators. After the Great Earthquake, Sataro had enough time for keeping robbing and continuing his debauchery throughout such big cities as Yokohama and Tokyo. Once he even tried to sexually abuse a daughter of a rice shop owner that he was working for. However, he was caught red-handed and was beaten. Later, when police officers came, a person who arrested him was a constable named Ono. Sataro just apologized to a daughter of a rice shop owner, and he was given another chance. His own brother even acted as a guarantor. Well, I think that was pretty stupid, and had Constable Ono known about everything that he has done so far and all his criminal background, maybe he would change his mind. Japan recovered from the Great Earthquake and the investigation restarted once again. Later, one witness showed up, and when that person was shown a lot of pictures, he chose exactly Satoru's picture. And Constable Ono, that I've mentioned before, came to his brother's place, who acted as a guarantor, and his brother revealed Satoru's location without any hesitation. Finally, Satoru was arrested on July 28, 1924, at the age of 36 by Constable Ono. He was sent to Tokyo Metropolitan Department for further investigation and imprisonment procedure. In one of the local newspapers called Asahi Tokyo, there was a column about the arrest of Satoru Fukiage, and there he was called a rare killer Fukiage. In the beginning of the investigation, he confessed to the sexual assault of more than 100 women and killing at least 13 of them. However, later he changed his mind and started recanting all the testimonies. To the question, why did he change his mind, he said that, "I have never seen a pleasant sun in my entire life, only dark days. I've done so bad things, but I have done them in delusion, so I don't have a clear memory of them." Honestly, he acted kind of weird throughout the entire investigation procedure. First, he admitted of killing 13 females and then recanted absolutely every testimony. And then during the court time, when his sentence was pronounced, he was found guilty of killing 3 females and was sentenced to death. Then he just stood up and started vehemently and angrily shouting at the judge, claiming that I killed 6 females. So you can imagine the situation and the reaction of the lawyer. Of course, lawyer suggested him to shut up and just write an autobiography with all the details of his murders. Later on, he was working on his autobiography book named Shabu, or The Street in English. It was a manuscript depicting Sadro's life path, including his opinion about the society and messages to parents of children. While he was working on his book, he appealed to the court, but his appeal was declined. He was literally begging the court, asking them, "I would like to write and publish the autobiography I'm writing now. I want time to do so, so I appeal to the Court of Justice. I'm not trying to escape my sins. The appeal will be withdrawn as soon as the autobiography is complete." Satoru appealed to the court for the second time in July, but this appeal was declined too. He was executed by hanging on September 28, 1926. The land of the rising sun finally got rid of a predator who was terrorizing society for years. His book was published, but it was banned from sales. And in his autobiography book, he mentioned his desire to contribute to society and left 5 crucial guidelines how to prevent nurturing such monsters as he was. Don't let your children feel sick or concerned. Try to give your children the best education. Try to play with your kids as much as possible and give them a lot of attention. If parents are grateful for their kids, the home can be a fun place. Avoid doing obscene or nasty things in front of your children. Satoru's life was full of struggles. One day he was trying to help his family members and pull them out of the poverty, and the other day he was raping and strangling innocent girls. He was interested in education and literature and was trying to help society, of course, in his own way, and he was the very person who molested his younger sister and kept robbing. We can say that he had a lot of ups and downs throughout his entire life. Some people say that Sataro was a wretched, soulless demon who was jeopardizing society, and they are totally right. However, we cannot deny the fact that he had a troubled life. Should his parents took a better care of him, he would probably become a normal person with his own family and kids, and we wouldn't gather here to discuss his story. He couldn't deal with and overcome all the pain and traumas, and he was causing pain and traumas to hundreds of other people. Satoru Fukiage may not be the brightest and the best person in history of Japan, but he will always be remembered as one of the first serial killers in the history of the country. That is pretty much all, and thank you very much for your attention. This story is an old one, and unfortunately, it was pretty challenging for me to gather all the information. If I missed some of it, feel free to leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you want to share your opinion or any additional information, you can also leave your comments. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel and click the like button. And if possible, I'll be really elated if you could share this video with more people so more people would be aware of this story. Thank you very much once again. Take care and see you next time.